And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook. It is Saturday, March 2nd, and this aviation weather outlook is for Sunday into Monday. Now, by the time we get into Sunday morning, we'll be watching the main weather action out here across the Bering Sea and through the southwest coast down across the Alaska Peninsula. There's an area of low pressure sitting back here out in the Bering, an initial front that's weakened, but it has an area of light snow that will be pushing inland along the southwest coast where there are winter weather advisories for blowing snow and some accumulation. There'll be another batch move in later Sunday night and during Monday morning. Meanwhile, Arctic high pressure is centered up around 1040 millibars over the Yukon. So we have that system to the east and then low pressure to the west, generally out over the Bering. So we still have some stronger winds across areas of the Alaska Peninsula up into the southwest coast and then also extending back out there toward the central western Aleutians. Much though of the interior, the central eastern mainland, it will experience VFR conditions as well as across the Panhandle. For Sunday afternoon, the system advances. The first weakening front kind of washes in, and it also spreads some lower ceilings and some precipitation up along Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula, broad area of IFR from the lower Chukchi Sea all the way down through the Bering Strait into the eastern Aleutians. And that's associated with that next push of precipitation. It'll be mainly some snow that will, again, have the need for advisories here along areas of the southwest coast. But still, we're expecting VFR conditions here, eastern mainland and across the Panhandle through Sunday afternoon. Now on Monday, with this second front pushing in, we expect widespread IFR conditions with snow and some blowing snow from the Bering Strait down here along the southwest coast into areas of the southwest interior and also along the Alaska Peninsula. There is going to be a secondary low developing by Monday afternoon just around and east of Kodiak Island. And so that's going to try to push up some IFR conditions here toward the lower portion of the Alaska Range. And we're going to have then on Tuesday a little more compact, stronger low that's going to come up into the lower Gulf by Tuesday night. So we've seen the pattern go back to more of a west-southwest to east-northeast track with lows either coming out of the North Pacific or the Bering, and then eventually secondary development or low in its own right out of the North Pacific coming up into the Gulf. And it is looking like as we get into midweek, later Tuesday and especially midweek, we could see another push of heavier precipitation in through the Panhandle as low pressure moves northeastward. So come Monday afternoon, we expect widespread IFR conditions, the Bering Strait, Seward Peninsula down across all the southwest, much of the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island. Expect low ceilings and visibilities, and area of VFR continues to hold over the southeast mainland back through the Panhandle. As I said, Panhandle will get back in on some active weather here as we get through midweek. But in the meantime, Anaktuvuk Pass there in the north on the central and eastern portion of the Brooks Range, Adigan Pass as well, VFR for the day Sunday. Further southwest, Lake Clark, Merrill on Sunday start out VFR early in the morning, but will quickly become MVFR and even IFR as we go into by mid-late afternoon. Rainy Pass should see VFR conditions with MVFR conditions they're developing in the afternoon and evening. Windy Pass should generally stay VFR conditions during the daylight hours of Sunday. And eastward, Isabel and Mentasta passes VFR there across the eastern portion of the Alaska Range. Across the Copper River Basin, also VFR conditions. Be a cold morning there in places like Alcana and Glen Allen, and then Portage Pass should generally be able to hold on to VFR conditions at least during the daytime Sunday. Further east, Chilkoot and White, as well as much of the Panhandle, will continue to enjoy relatively quiet and crisp weather with VFR conditions Sunday into Monday. Looking at freezing levels, Sunday morning, the surface freezing line bumps upward here in through the Bering Sea with low pressure in this location, helping to draw some milder air aloft along these frontal boundaries. As I mentioned, the first frontal wave kind of coming in and washing out along the southwest coast with a secondary, a little stronger front that has a little more moisture with it that'll be moving into the southwest areas here, especially Sunday night into Monday morning. And we find the surface freezing line is all the way down into the Gulf here Sunday morning because there's plenty of cold air thanks to that Arctic high pressure centered over the Yukon. And the greatest threat for icing will be in the precipitation-producing clouds associated with those troughs and fronts out to the west. We find that with that moisture and with the temperature structure aloft, that above 6,000 feet here, the eastern Aleutians into the Alaska Peninsula, above 4,000 feet along Kuskokwim, Bristol Bays into the areas of the southwest interior, and then a little further north into the colder air. Above 2,000 feet, you may encounter some considerable moderate icing there during the day on Sunday, especially as we get in to the afternoon and evening. The upper level wind flow here for Sunday at 30,000 feet jet stream level, we have a ridge that's up here over the western Gulf. The ridge axis runs from the eastern mainland down here into the western Gulf, and the front side of it, northerly flow upwards 85 to 100 knots here across the northern panhandle. So back to the west, we have a jet core of 130 knots just to the south and southwest of the Aleutians. Bringing it down to 9,000 feet or 700 millibars, we find still some outflow winds here across areas of the panhandle, winds out of the north-northeast at 9,000 feet. More of a west-southwest flow across the lower Bering and the Aleutians into the Alaska Peninsula with a core of winds around and over 50 knots central Aleutians southwestward. And then at 3,000 feet during the day on Sunday, we still have some outflow winds here in the northern panhandle. But winds are going to be turning around more toward the southeast south here across the southwest portion of Alaska Peninsula up into the southwest interior and up into the middle Yukon Valley. So we get further back to the west, broad area of westerly winds across the central and western Aleutians with wind max over 50 knots there to the southwest there of the Aleutian chain. And what this spells for turbulence is that we expect moderate turbulence in areas of the panhandle with some of those outflow winds still surface to 6,000 feet. Broad area of isolated moderate turbulence with that southwest, actually southeast to southwest flow from the lower levels going upward. Surface to 4,000 feet across the southwest, northern part of the Alaska Peninsula, and then pulling back toward the west, we find that we could have some moderate turbulence, surface to 3,000 feet, especially central back through the western Aleutians on Sunday.